So, good morning, audience. Today it's in our episode 4 about having the project where I'm going to interview the world's top successful people in the education field. I'm happy to be with you here again. Mrs. Heba I'm a vice principal of one of the international schools in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. And here with a fabulous, famous one, Mr. Carl Garner, who discovered and who invented the EQ, the Emotional Intelligence Map. So I have an honor to have him as a guest in my episode for today. He is the director of psychology and education and currently the senior consultant of Princess Noura University. Good morning, Mr. Carl. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's good.
Fine.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a precious for having you. Thanks for your precious time. Okay, if I asked you about to give us more hint about the EQ mapping and how did you how it will take the education from this point till that point, because I do believe in this, and I read many of you things you wrote, and I do believe that you are doing a fabulous thing. So give us about that.
Thank you. Well, the map, the original design for the map, it was basically, we did this because there was a need for it in cognitive behavioural therapy. A lot of cognitive behavioural therapists were using things, Plutchik's wheel, and some of their comments were saying that it was too sort of symmetrical and too linear. And they said when it comes to emotions, they're very, very complicated. So how can we make the complicated and simpler? So I took some inspiration from a guy called Harry Beck. Harry Beck was a cartographer, and he was charged with making London's sort of mapping system a little bit simpler. So he took a really sort of very, it's almost like spaghetti on a plate, and then he made it very simple. And then it sort of hit me about how can we simplify our emotions. So we used the Harry Beck mapping concept, and it's been commented that it looks very similar to London Underground. And
wow, so this is similar, like we're in London now. You're currently, right?
We actually were inspired by the colours of London Underground. So we also looked at when you look at happiness, what sort of colour do you sort of associate with happiness? And we looked at sunshine and yellow. When it came to stress, it was this very purpley sort of, on the breaking point. Anger, we used the red line. Trust had an association with green, and et cetera. So when we look at the map itself, it has happiness, empathy, anger, relevance, trust, and stress, and then it all spells out the word hearts, and that's what we try to simplify something quite complicated. The objective being, we want our children or the people that use the map to re-qualify their emotions more effectively. If you enhance and develop your emotional literacy, you just become a better decision maker, a better influencer, and overall a better connector.
Wow, very nice. I do have a belief that all of us, we have a sense of kind of leadership inside us, but we need just like a roadmap to help us how we can get that way. So I are simplifying this, like you have mentioned now, to control, to have a self-discipline about ourselves, right? To control our emotion, to control our connection, communication with people, and like this. And specifically for kids, because I know that you are giving this project for the younger educators, or the learners, right?
Yeah, it's a simplified version of this. Every decision we make, even the most logical of decisions, is based on emotional intelligence. It only makes sense that we should develop our emotional literacy so we can just become a better influencer.
I see. Because most of the children, in the younger ages, they are taking decisions about themselves, about the surrounding, the world, or their teachers, their mothers. It might be with wrong concept, right? So
it's possible, yes.
Yeah. So here you are guiding the one dealing with them how to discover their strength and how to, organize their thinking. Am I right?
Well, what we've even looked at this. We've had this translated into Arabic. It's also been used. We've had it translated into little emojis. So the objective being that children could use this map. It wouldn't be just be for educators or teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even psychologists. We'd be looking at the children having a greater sense of awareness themselves. So, for example, when we look at the map, how often do we say, oh, I feel so depressed, or I was furious, when often we can say, well, if we requalified our emotions, we might not be so angry, we could just be confused or frustrated. And when we start to requalify our emotions, we just become better connectors.
So I'm hitting the track about the, I'm calling for myself, it's a Bermuda Triangle, because it's hitting the line with the parents to raise the awareness about them, as well as the teacher, as well as the students themselves. Am I right? Okay,
so you have this triangle formation of when you talk about education. So we looked at something very, very similar, and but we called it facts. So we had a look at the families, because obviously now it's not just parents now, families could also be involved. We had a look at the administration of a school. We also looked at the community around the school, who also had an accountability, the teachers and the students. So I think we would probably add to that with the administration and community. So instead of saying, often we look at how we apportion blame if kids don't get the right grades. We want to shift the paradigm of education, and we want to properly prepare children for life after school. To do that, we need to shift the importance of grades and change the rubrics. If we could change the rubrics and just make children happier individuals, I think this would lead on to success and would also have an impact on grades as well.
I mean, with the Generation Z and 21st century, we need to prepare them for life, being lifelong learners. Am I right? So it's always will come to the point about the IQ versus the EQ. So what kind of advices you can give it to the the early starting teachers, the early parents, to help the students take from that area to this area?
I think it's really interesting. I've seen some places that have been misquoted when they looked at Daniel Gorman's work, when he said that we only equate about 20% of our success to IQ, and that's been misinterpreted, and people have said 80% is EQ, and that's not quite right. He didn't mean that. He said 20% was IQ, and there are multiple other factors out there. Emotional intelligence, I certainly believe, would have a very high impact on one's success, but I feel there are multiple intelligences. So looking at Dr. Howard Gardner's earlier work, when he did about the multiple intelligences, looking at auditory intelligence, looking at spatial intelligence, emotional intelligence was split into two, physical intelligence was quite important.
They classified it, I think, to 9.
That's right, yeah. And then we did a revised model of his work. We classified it to 7, but we looked at things like auditory intelligence and data intelligence and spatial intelligence, and all of these things have an impact on us as we develop, certainly.
So you are just saying, like, you are taking the merge between the Daniel Goleman, because I'm a good reader for Daniel, and the multiple intelligence for Howard Gardner, right?
I've taken inspiration from Howard Garner's work.
Yeah.
We certainly haven't taken his work.
No, I mean, you are taking the merge about the inspiration of both.
Daniel Goleman wasn't the first. It comes from Slavely. He was the I think he's the principal of, or was the director now of Yale.
Yeah.
He was the first person to bring out emotional intelligence, and how that we should be able to, we know how to measure it and we know how to develop it, therefore we should be putting this into our schools and in education systems. This was done in the 80s. Daniel Goleman was the guy that wrote about it, made it a bit sexy. He was the guy that sort of got famous off it, and then we, there have been many people that have written.
You're trying to cascade this one and be implemented in the schools, you mean? This is your approach through H2 advisory.
There are, yes. So, for example, we've taken a lot of work has been done. For example, Gorman, we can have a look at Stephen Covey, who did the 7 Habits. We can have a look at 6 Thinking Hats, and what they did. They were focused on the corporate market, and what we want to do is to say, well, if we simplify this, we can actually do this for children.
Yeah.
Can you stop it there as well, please?